Hey everybody, thank you for joining us for part 6 of our Leap Academy series. If you are new to this, the purpose behind these is really to understand all the different components that go into the transition over to a digital business, how you implement technology, how that technology is going to work with each one of the facets of your business or functions within your organization. And then on top of that too, how you can leverage each functional component from financing, capturing payments, your estimates, contracts, all that good stuff. How to understand what best practices exist for each one of those components so that if you are going to use a tool like Leap, you can level up and really understand from the best of the best, which we tend to try and bring a power user for each session that we run so that they can tell their story and how they leverage it and what they've learned. So in this case, today we're thankfully joined by one of our superstar customers, Mike Lyons, who's the corporate sales trainer from Long Fence and Home. Really big time organization in the Northeast that does literally anything and everything to your house, fence and bathrooms, roofs, all that good stuff. But really excited to have him on the conversation with us today. He's got a lot of really cool insights that he'll share about how he implemented technology within his organization. And we've got a lot of really good details to give you a good understanding of what my background is and why this is a subject that's near and dear to my heart. I actually personally don't come from the home improvement space. For me, I've had to learn that over the last couple of years and really figure out how this industry functions. My background is predominantly in private equity. So for me, I would go into organizations, whether they were startups or turnarounds, and my specialty is leveraging technology and really functionally driving change management throughout organizations, growing the business, and either building it for sale or building it for some sort of IPO or public offering. So a lot of really cool experience that I've had in the past from companies of all shapes and sizes, from 5-person startups all the way to several thousand employees. So operating at a micro level as well as a massive scale is something I'm extremely familiar with. And being totally honest, the problems are all the exact same, irrespective of size, which is why these are so exciting. We have customers that are all different shapes and sizes, walks of life, et cetera, from owner-operator all the way up to companies that have several hundred outside sales reps. So really pumped for you guys to join us today. Without further ado, Mike, if you want to introduce yourself real fast, and we'll get this thing kicked off.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, James. Mike Lyons with Long Fence and Home and Long Roofing. I've been in the home improvement industry now for just about 10 years and was in sales for 8 of those, sitting at the kitchen table like most of us, and then moved into the sales training and wanted to take it a next step further. We always want to be on the cutting edge of the technology. It's impressive, adds more validity, and I think value to the business. So pairing and partnering with Leap has been a very positive thing all the way around. So very excited to be here and talk about how we implement it and adopt it Leap.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. Really appreciate it and very happy to have you on the call today. Moving forward, you guys, so here's the agenda we're going to cover. Today's theme is change management. If I'm going to adopt any kind of new operations, whether technologically based or not, how do I maintain and own that from beginning to end? And what are some of the pitfalls that I can learn from so that I avoid those hard knocks? Again, we've all been there. I guarantee if anyone has ever tried to implement any sort of change whatsoever in their business, I guarantee every single person on this call has run into some sort of wall when trying to do so, whether that involves somebody digging in their heels, just being resistant to change, questioning decisions. It happens to everyone. So what we want to do today is we want to give you some of the tools to really combat this and do it the right way. So first thing, we're going to really just look at 2 main points, and then we're honestly going to turn it over to Mike, because Mike has done this at scale in our industry. He's felt the same pains as you guys, And it's really something that he has mastered. It's been one of the smoothest launches we've ever had for an organization. And frankly, they have just taken it and run with it. They are what we would define as a poster child or power user for Leap. So it's been a pleasure to work with him thus far. And again, that's why we were so unbelievably excited when he agreed to do this, this webinar with us today. So the first thing we're going to look at is why change management fails. These are going to be all the pitfalls and reasons. A lot of them are going to be, really captain obvious points, but at the same time, the things that we always negate. They happen again and again and again. If we look at what fails, we also have to look at what wins, which is our second point. It's ways to increase the adoption and really control the process from end to end. And then, like I said, we're going to jump in with Mike, and we'll even take that all the way through some Q&A. So moving forward, let's take a look at why it fails, all right? We want to keep this practical. So we're going to take a look at really, there's a million reasons why it fails, but we're going to look at 4 very common themes that based on research and based on interviews within this industry, they just happen again and again and again and again. So first things first, let's take a look at number 1, which is really the need isn't foreseen. All right, and what we mean by this is there are 2 types of individuals who run organizations. There are those who just say, all right, things are on cruise control. I can just sit back and relax and we're just going to run with it. Those are the ones that typically get hit with a wall at some point. And what I mean by that is a lot of times those individuals are so caught up in the now, they forget to understand and recognize that trends are happening all around them. Our industry is rapidly changing. The homeowner, the age of inventory, a lot of different factors are now involved that are drastically shifting how a lot of organizations in this space are needing to operate. One of the things that we look at, and we've done this in so many of our other slides, is that over 50% of companies in this space still use manual processes. And you ask yourself, why is that the case? Especially when we look at other data points that say, millennials are the fastest growing new homeowners. And again, they're not buying new homes, they're buying our aging inventory. The average age of home is built in the 70s. So when you look at that, all of these homes are time capsules and they need to be updated. So if you're dealing with a young, new homeowner with a house that needs to be improved, you have to be able to sell to that person, and the only way you do that is technology. Yet, again, when we look at that other statistic of 50% of people using manual methods, that basically just goes to show that there's a lot of people out there who fit into this bucket. The need isn't foreseen. They haven't recognized that something needs to change, and they need to get ahead of it. And one of the reasons why change management tends to fail is because they don't recognize it until it hits them in the head. And then once it does, if you look at that third bullet, it's, hey, that 11th hour scramble where they're like, oh my God, we got to change. Our competition is getting better. We're losing jobs. People don't like the way we operate. Well, guess what? If you recognize it at that point in time, you're going to scramble and you're going to make mistakes. Okay, that doesn't mean it's impossible, but oftentimes this is one of the massive sources for failure. While you're scrambling to make the changes, you typically have a bunch of errors and costly mistakes, and you get a lot of people who are resistant to change, you get turnover, all sorts of stuff like that. So again, while people might not recognize this as like a real obvious reason for failure, it's a snowball effect is what it ultimately boils down to. It's you recognize that change needs to happen way too late, and then you scramble to get it done way too fast. That's what this boils down to. If you have any questions too, I apologize for not saying this at the beginning of the webinar. Please feel free to drop those in the questions or the comments section. We watch these things very intently, so by all means, throw those in there and we can answer those throughout. So the next one we're going to take a look at is the lack of alignment. When it comes to an organization, typically what we find is there's so many cooks in the kitchen. You've got your marketing folks, you've got your CRM folks, you've got your sales teams, your install and your production teams. All of them have to buy into this kind of change. And oftentimes what we find is that, number one, you get this really lack of cohesion when looking at the big picture. It's everybody's looking at this going like, yeah, well, I don't think we need that now. Well, the reality is change touches everything within an organization, whether you believe it or not. It's gonna. And if you're not aligned across departments, you're going to run into massive issues. The other thing you're going to run into also is a lot of times people don't recognize why they're changing. The first two, there's one of two ways in which companies look at data. One, they don't, and they're basically running off of their gut feeling. Well, 9 times out of 10, if not 99 times out of 100 or 100% of the time, if you will, data doesn't lie. If you look at it, it's usually glaringly obvious what you should be doing as a business. If you're making mistakes, if you're losing money, if your reps are overly negotiating or giving away your margin, that should be glaringly obvious that something needs to change. The other side of that is people look way too much at the data. And they say, well, what does it mean? What about this? Let's look at this. Let's look at that. And they get in this really vicious cycle that is commonly used as analysis, or commonly referred to as analysis paralysis. The unfortunate side of both is they usually lead to no action, which ultimately takes us back to that whole well, it's the way we've always done it. The second you hear that out of someone's mouth, it's basically a death sentence. Moving along, the third one, let's talk about the alignment piece a little bit deeper. Mike mentioned when we were talking on site, he came to our offices about 2 weeks ago, and one of the things he said that was incredibly important when they were building this out was the intelligent design of their product. So Leap can be used with any company, shape, size, product. It doesn't matter. You could sell, you could sell anything under the sun. It doesn't even have to be in home improvement. But the reality is, you have to include the stakeholders in all the different departments so that they have a functional understanding of not only what it does, but they can help you make those intelligent decisions on how to design it. If it doesn't work across all the departments and it doesn't integrate with the different systems, unfortunately what you're going to find, it's just going to create headaches and you're going to make enemies real fast. So that's another reason why change management is drastically impacted, if not shattered, when you don't include people from other departments. If they become a naysayer or a detractor, they will poison the well faster than you knew what hit them. So, lastly, this is the one I would say, this one of all of them is the most important. All of our organizations are built by somebody who put their blood, sweat, and tears into a business. I know if you go on Long's website, they have an incredible history. They were started in 1945, so they've been around for a very, very long time, gone through many different iterations and many different hierarchical changes, whether that be the immediate family or some of the other general managers that climb the ranks. There's been an amazing, amazing evolution within their organization. And I think one of the things that's clear is throughout their tenure, anytime they've launched a new initiative, it's really been driven by a leader. Someone has taken the reins and really driven that change from the top down. If you lack that, and it's presented as something that's optional, or we might do this, or if reps say, no, I don't want to do that, I want to stick with paper. Well, guess what? They're sticking with something that has caused your business pain and is holding you back from growth. That's not good. If you're going to make a change in your business, no matter what the size or scale, it has to be driven by the top down, and it has to be driven by someone who's going to lead by example. It can't just be one person. It's got to be a total buy-in, trickling from the absolute top of the food chain all the way down to the entry-level staff. And if it's not, you're going to find that lack of cohesion and that lack of direction is just going to bite you in the long run. So, without further ado, this is a section where, we just talked about all the pitfalls. We talked about all the horror stories, all the terrible pieces that have led to true failure when trying to implement change within businesses. And I have anecdotes for days, or examples for days, of when all of those, every single one of the topics that we just discussed, has bitten me in the butt personally, and I felt that pain. I felt that failure. But learn from these mistakes, learn from the best practices out there, and recognize that just slight little tweaks can absolutely help you increase your adoption and prevent you from hitting that wall like I did. So the next little bit is we want to boil it down into 5 wins. Mike, I'm going to have you jump in with me as we go throughout these. We're going to treat this as a way for us to just talk a little bit about Long and how you guys handled some of this, but more importantly, use this as the framework when we go into your story on some of the successes. So we're really going to use this section as more of a back and forth and more of a conversation. So these 5 bullet points: know your audience, have patience and take your time, build the reinforcement systems and the rewards, manage from the top down, and then more importantly, identify those champions of your build. We're going to go through each one of these. We're going to go through them together. So first things first, one of the things that we like to say is like, you got to know your audience. Every single one of you guys have built these things or built these businesses from the ground up. You know every one of the faces that has made you who you are, that runs your leads, that sells your deals, that is an ambassador of your company to the public. So you have to make sure that when you implement a change like this, you speak to them individually. If you don't do that, one of the things they're always going to run into is you're going to run into that resistance because they don't feel like they're a part of it or they don't feel included. So Mike, as we pause before going to the next slide, talk to me a little bit about how you guys started this process at Long and how you, before, excuse the pun, before taking the leap, how you guys really made this concise decision, including all the key stakeholders.
Well, I knew it was going to be difficult because no one likes change, and we all know that. And James, you spoke to that earlier, but I knew that it was going to be a pretty easy transition with our younger employees because they're millennials. Like we, grew up with computers and iPads and iPhones, and it's just kind of like, oh, great, I don't have to do paper, and I can do everything on here. Fantastic. But I was terrified to tell our older reps who don't like IT, don't like to mess with it, don't want to mess with it. And really what we did is I'm going to use our top rep. I won't say his name, but he's a phenomenal guy, and he had never done a digital contract at all. And I think it's worth stating that we didn't go right from paper to Leap. We went from paper to another program where you write on top of a PDF. So it was really the same thing as filling out a contract. And it wasn't pricing anything. It was just a contract tool. Now, he was the only one who went from paper right into Leap. And I brought him in one-on-one, and I said, listen, this is what we're going to be doing. And I want to give you a heads up on it. And this was months and months before we rolled it out live. And I said, I will spend as much time as I need with you one-on-one until you feel comfortable with it. And the rewarding part about it is 2 months into using Leap, he came into my office and he sat down and he was excited after a sale. And he said, Mike, I've mastered Leap. And I mean, I almost fell out of my chair because I thought he was messing with me at first, and now he loves it. So you have to give people a reason to, I always say I don't want people to buy in, because when you buy in, you're doing it for someone else. I want people to believe in it because then you're doing it for you. And it's been contagious through our sales force that, hey, we want, when's Leap coming out? When's Leap coming out? I think it's very important too that I had a couple demos while I was building it as well to kind of, put the carrot out there a little bit to have them get excited. And then it turned from, I don't want change to when's Leap going live? When's Leap going live? And that was it was very beneficial on our end to do it that way.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And again, when we go back and sum a lot of this stuff up, it's also when you're making this decision, if you know this is the route that you want to go and you know a digital sales tool is something you want to do, that goes back to that point that we made at the beginning of one of our pitfalls, is that you see it coming. In Long's case, they absolutely saw that they needed to make this transition. Even though they were using a digital contract tool, they were still having to price a lot of things out manually. But knowing that they were eventually going to do an all-in-one sales tool, they could go to their reps and they could say, hey, if we did this, what would you want it to do? How would you want it to function? How do you want to be able to price these little itty bitty things out? Whether that's their managers or whether that's any of the top sales reps that they included, the neat thing about it is they recognized who their audience was. I mean, Long has over 50 plus sales reps in the field at any given time. So when you look at that, they not only did it, but they did it at a pretty massive scale. So kudos to you guys on that one. That's one of the reasons why this was such a seamless rollout. Moving on to the next, this is another massive issue that we see again and again and again. Long has a bunch of different divisions within their organization, but Mike, on your end, how many of those did you guys, before I go to these other bullet points, how many of those did you guys launch with when you went live? Oh, are you there, Mike? Uh-oh, maybe muted. But while we get the audio sorted on his end, one of the things to note, you guys, is that Long does bathrooms. They do fences. They do exterior remodeling, windows, fences, the whole 9 yards. But they started with roofing. Mike, are you back by chance?
Yes, I am. I'm sorry. I'm
Okay.
having some audio issues.
No worries, no worries. So what I was asking was, on your end, knowing that your organization sells a tremendous amount of variety and products, how many of those did you guys start with when you first came on to Leap?
Well, that was something that, the short answer is all. And I know that contradicts the phase launches, but what we made an executive decision that we just I didn't want paper still out there, different processes. What we did though, as not product, but we did phased launches. I'm getting ready to fly up to Boston next week and finally roll out Leap Live up in Boston. So we did it, our retail team first down here in Maryland. Then we did our market recovery department. Then we did our restoration department. And now New England is going to be the next one. So I do think that in the way it worked for us, I just didn't want, once you roll it out, again, we talked about people not liking change. It was going to be more difficult, and I talked to reps. It wasn't, we just didn't make a decision, behind closed doors and not talk to the people actually in the field. And they were like, I don't want to be doing roofing in Leap, but then be doing windows and something else. But with that being said, I did phased trainings on it. So we focused on roofing first and trained the team for a week, 2 or 3 days each on roofing, and then we moved to windows, and then we moved to siding and doors, and so on. So that was very important. Not to, all right, here's how you use Leap, and here are all the products, and this is what you're going to do with them, because it's overwhelming, at first.
Yeah, absolutely. And to Mike's point again, I apologize for the confusion on that one. One of the things that we do see with a lot of organizations is in companies that have a tremendous amount of SKUs in their product suites, oftentimes what they'll do is if they have multiple locations like Long, they'll do a phased rollout in that they'll start with one office, master it, work out the kinks, and then roll it out to the subsequent locations. In other instances, they recognize that they have one location that sells a ton of different things, but within these organizations, they have different teams. There might be a dedicated sales group that only does exterior, another one that does interior, another that does hardscaping, whatever it might be. And at that point, again, they phase it by rolling out to different teams with different products at different times. So depending on what you have, the moral of this story is whether you're doing a phased rollout to teams or whether you're doing it by product, Rome wasn't built in a day. you have to have the patience to recognize that the more you push it on folks and the faster you hold them to timelines, the more stress it puts on it and the more it detracts from the experience. So if you have that patience to recognize that this is a big initiative and there's a lot involved with it, you have to slow down. You have to make sure that the teams recognize what they're doing at each step in the process. By doing that and by slowing yourself down, it's just going to increase your adoption and increase those individuals' ability to comprehend what they need to do to be successful. So,
Well, James,
Mike, correct me if I'm. Go ahead.
I think it's also, this is a in-home sales tool, but it affects everything. I mean, if you think about, all of our businesses, right? It's all, the in-home sales remodeling industry is, you could say it's like a stream, and everything that you put in at the top of the stream is going to come downstream eventually and affect everything. So I think one thing that we did that was very, very helpful and made it even more seamless, not even having to do with sales. Obviously, our sales reps, they need to know it because they're the ones using it. But I also went to production, to processing, to finance, to the call center. And it took about a month, but everyone in our organization, 140, 150 employees, received a demo of Leap, how it works, and how is it going to affect this I360 side when things are uploaded. How's it going to affect financing? How's it going to affect deposits? And it literally affected everything, resulting appointments, what we're going to do in there, what the call center needs to look for, and what it means. And it's just everyone now was on board before we said go. And I think that's major and monumental to do that. So.
Absolutely. And again, taking that approach just means that you're working smarter, not harder. So moving on to the next, and this is one that's really interesting, and this comes from more my background, is, this quote actually comes from a report that was put out by the McKinsey company. McKinsey is one of the world-renowned consulting firms that exist. Typically what you find is that every single person that consults for them has a Wharton MBA. They probably did Harvard or Yale as an undergrad. They're just an incredibly impressive company that has a global presence in any sort of massive change that happens. What they did is there was a study that was brought into a lot of their operations when they first went out. It happened back in the early 1900s, actually. This individual was doing tests with mice and with rats, and basically what he would do is he would put these mice through a tunnel or through a maze. When they made a wrong turn, they were given a shock. When they got to the middle, they were given corn, or they were given basically some sort of treat that got them really excited. Eventually what they noticed was that the more the rats got to the middle and they memorized the turns, the less impressed they were by the treat at the middle. What they had to do in order to keep them engaged is they had to continuously move it around and provide them with different incentives. Eventually they also got numb to the shocks. So the point that I'm making with this is not that your salespeople are rats, but more importantly, what we need to understand is that people need constant incentive and they need constant milestones with finish lines, etc. And that has a drastic improvement on whether or not change is adopted. So as you go through things like sales contests, things like accolades and awards, little itty bitty milestones that can be identified based on what that adoption is, if you start including those throughout your processes, you're going to find that the success of any change that's implemented within an organization is going to skyrocket. Another one of the really cool things that I've personally done in the past is you also change your reporting sets. So when you start identifying some of the reasons why you shift to digital in the first place, whether it's errors or mistakes, whether it's bottlenecks in your systems, efficiencies, etc., start identifying reports and data sets that will speak back to those decisions, that will speak back to those pain points. By doing so, again, you not only balance out that reward for the people that are actually using the technology in the field, you're also making it almost a reassurance to those who are involved at the top that, hey, that decision that you made to do this, it's a good thing, and here's what we've seen as a result. So Mike, how I kind of spin this over to you on your end is, what kind of successes have you seen, and how have those successes been disseminated throughout the organization?
I think there's multiple. I mean, when we talked earlier, you and I mean, you talk about pros and cons, and it takes me a while to think about a con. But the pros that we've seen, and this is coming right from our reps. For example, we have a rep that lives in Fredericksburg, Virginia. On a good day with no traffic, and anyone from the DMV area knows that's Sunday at 3 a.m. It takes him 2 hours to get to the office. And he came to me and said, "Listen, this is awesome. Like I have such a better work-life balance because I don't have to come 2 hours after I'm running leads down in Northern Virginia to the office just to hand in a contract or a drawing or whatever for the job, and then drive back down to Northern Virginia and run appointments. And it's cut down on travel time for reps because they don't have to come to the office and hand in paperwork. So it's been all around just really, really nice. Now it's also for the customers. The customers love it as well. We can make it a little interactive. It puts more validity in what we do. And I mean, with a customer and you're pushing away on your calculator and they're looking at you like, what is this guy doing on his calculator? Well, you put it in the Leap and, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, here's the price. And you have the price right in front of you. There's no, writing down, scribbling on a scratch pad and adding a bunch of numbers up. So it has reduced our our cancellation rate by 3%.
I was going to say, whoa, yeah. Reduced your retention. No, yeah. Thank you. Sorry about that. I was making a joke.
Yeah, I don't want to. We don't want anything to reduce the retention, but yeah, it's reduced the cancellation rate by 3%, and that's when you do 4,000 jobs, and people can do the math on their own. That's thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in reduced cancellations. And in my opinion, it's because everything is so seamless. Boom, they have the contract in their email, they have all the email links, they have their warranty information, and it's just people love it, and it's even customers have put on surveys. I really like that program with the frog that the sales rep was using.
That's awesome. So, and as an accolade to anyone listening to this too, you guys, one of the really amazing facts about Long is they've got over 6,000 reviews online, and they still maintain I think it's 4.6 star. So it's a company that not only does it right, but they continue to do it right. So when you talk about the customer experience, they are truly one of the individuals that have defined what it means to do good work by the individual and be an incredibly successful business at the same time. So just as a little note to self. So moving along, when we talk to you about leading from the top down, all right, there's a big difference between somebody who's just slamming their fist on a desk saying, you shall do this or else, and somebody who leads by example. So when you look at this, there's been a number of different organizations too that we've worked with that, when they come in, they're like, oh my God, I tried to implement this other thing, and we told reps, hey, yeah, you should try it and let us know how it goes. And if you don't like it, yeah, I guess we can just move to a different tool. No. Anytime change is done in a business, it results in some sort of opportunity cost, right? Whether that's lost productivity, whether that's that's actual money spent on training, design, and headcount, et cetera, or tech support. There is a dollar amount that is associated with that. So when you look at why companies are successful, the best ones out there are the ones that jump headfirst in once they've made a plan And once they've clearly identified what they need to do, they dive in and they say, all right, this is what we're going to do and this is why we're going to do it. So you can see the bullets on there. You got to be involved. You can't just, you can't just say, hey, this is what we're doing, and somebody else, you go own it, and that's that. No, 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 no. Like, one of the neatest things with Long is they have come to our office a number of times. They've been deeply involved in every step of this process. They've brought in those key stakeholders. They really make sure that everybody that needs to be involved is involved at every step of the process. So, Mike, on your end, I think we can just skim on this one pretty fast. How has the executive leadership really been involved, especially when making the decision early on to use Leap within the organization?
Well, I didn't. I mean, I guess I could say I really didn't give them a choice. I went, to them with a plan, with demo, and when you talk to an owner of a company, the thing that really makes their ears perk up is dollars and cents. So, what are we going to save per year on carbon copy contracts? What are we going to save as far as hours, man hours worked in processing and scanning in documents and uploading them into our CRM? All of these things, that's what got them excited. That's what gave me the opportunity to, partner us with Leap. And then to take it the next step, every step of the way, when you're the owner of your company is and then the president and the COO and CFO and all the executive team are walking, they see in the hallway and they're like, hey, when's Leap coming out? You're doing something right because I got them involved. I showed them, hey, this is where we are right now. Look how cool this is. And I have to give kudos to, our owner, John DePaula, who he loves technology and he always wants to be cutting edge. And if you bring him something that makes sense, he is willing to, spend the money to do it and spend the money to make it right and do it right and roll it out the right way. And that's been, he's made my life easy with the support from upper management. And now they love it. I mean, they
That's awesome.
want demos, so it's pretty cool.
That's neat. And were they instrumental in bringing in a lot of those other departments as well?
No, that was mainly. I mean, they trusted me to to do it the right way, which I would be not telling the full truth if I said that wasn't a little nerve-wracking.
I
But
bet.
I had to come up with a plan, and I knew that this is going to affect everyone that is employed by Long. This is going to affect. So let's get everyone involved. And I sat with production. I said, how do you want the contracts to read? How is it easy? The easiest way for us to give it to the installer and the installer read a contract and everything be very clear and concise. Then financing. How do you want this to come across and what's the verbiage? And then we got obviously our lawyers involved and they went over the additional terms and conditions and made sure those were all good. So everyone, there's not one person in this organization that you can say, hey, what's Leap? And they say, I don't know what you're talking about, because they've all seen a demo and been part of the process. And when that happens, people feel included, and then they get excited about it. And then if you can get everyone to that point, life's easy at that point.
Perfect. And that honestly is a fantastic segue into our next and final slide on this one, which is really just identifying those ambassadors to change. And for you guys, I mean, what you just described was exactly that. It's identifying that there needs to be somebody involved at every step of the process from every department to truly understand and be that voice for, if we're going to do this, this is how it's going to help me. And then the neat thing is, as you look at the way teams are structured, irrespective of size of organization or what you sell or where in the country you sell, this is always going to be true. You have to have the champions of the change. Otherwise, you're never going to be successful. Otherwise, you're going to run into roadblocks. You're going to run into naysayers. You're going to run into those detractors. You're going to run into the folks that will effectively poison the well and say, oh, that's dumb. I don't want to do it. That's just going to make our life that more difficult. Like, if you don't have those ambassadors and you don't have those voices being your champion, preaching the success of this, really reiterating those reasons why anybody makes these changes in the first place, you're gonna have a much more difficult time. So, final thoughts or anything on this one? Mike?
Yeah, James. I mean, I would say, I mean, just a quick story of someone who's been here over 15 years. He's in our ordering department. Phenomenal human being. And when I went to him, you said something earlier. You asked people, hey, why do you do that? Well, that's just what we've always done. Well, okay, but how would you like to have it? What's going to make your life easier? And he started going, listing a couple things. And he said, you know what, give me a day or two and I'll write them all down. And he had quite an extensive list. And I went down the list and I was like, we can do all of that with Leap. And he just looked up at me and he's like, really? I said, yeah, I mean, it's going to take some time, but we can do all that if that makes it seamless and your job easier. And again, he's not an IT guy. He hates computers. I mean, he doesn't even have one at his house, but he appreciates Leap because it makes his life that much easier. And now it's not, hey, that's what we've always done. Well, okay, well, is there a way better to do it? And if there is, let's make it happen. And that's one of the things that's beautiful about Leap is it's so you can do anything with it, which makes life a lot easier for everyone through the organization.
That's awesome. So again, you guys, when we look at it, you guys have truly seen, and we kind of did this through that last section. If anyone didn't know, that's Mike right there. Again, just a superstar. We've had so much success bringing him in, working very closely with him. Their organization is just astonishing. Like everything they've done has just defined industry best practices. Even with Leap, they've started looking at things in certain ways that have really shifted the way we've started developing and making Leap even better. So from a product standpoint, the way they've used it has caused us to also start building in ways to improve the product. So again, we are incredibly grateful for the interaction that we've had with the organization. With Mike specifically, he has just been a superstar champion for us along the way. So again, Mike, I cannot thank you enough for everything that you've done with the relationship. When you look at the accolades that they've personally built out, again, we addressed a lot of these throughout. I mean, Long has an incredible reach. You're talking from my house in Northern Virginia all the way to their offices in New England. I mean, what would be the equivalent of a 10-hour drive? These guys cover that entire territory. It's a very, very impressive footprint as an organization, and they've built an incredible shop. 60 plus outside sales reps, 4,000 jobs installed in 2018. When you do the math, like you mentioned, with that 3% improvement on retention, it's not just thousands of dollars, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars plus. And again, we can all look at the average ticket price in our own organization and just apply what's 3% of that multiplied by your average ticket. It's a lot. Their rating speaks for how they do business and their long-term mentality of being a customer-minded and customer-focused shop. And they just do it right. So again, if Leap works for an organization like this, and if they've been able to leverage this tool to really redefine their entire business, you guys 100% can as well. Again, we have customers ranging from owner-operator all the way up to just huge juggernauts, like Long as well. And it's something that if you haven't seen it in practice, I truly recommend that via next steps, you request some sort of demo on our site. Feel free to go to leap2digital.com. Mike, were there any parting thoughts or anything that we missed? I'm going to pull up a couple of the questions on our end, and I think there's like one or two that we can address right now. The rest of it, honestly, we can handle as one-offs on our end. But was there anything you want to say as a parting thought?
No, I mean, just to reinforce what you said, the partnership. I mean, as much as you guys appreciate it, we do too. And it has been, it's changed the way that we've operated. And I know, with extensive talks with Steve and Allison and Kainat, we've bettered each other. So, and that's what you hope for in a partnership. And I think we both agree on our side and your side that it's been a great partnership, and we've both moved forward and grown and gotten better at each aspect of our business.
Ah, that's fantastic. Thanks, man. So I'll finish this off with just there's one question here that we can address. It's when you guys were launching this, and you put this in the hands of the sales reps. At what point did you bring them in? At what point did you say, hey, here's not only what the product can do, and here's a demo of the product? When did you get it in the hands of those reps, and how many people did you start with launching?
So like I mentioned earlier, I did a couple short demos as I was building it. When I finished the roofing section, I did a little demo on roofing, and then we moved to windows and so on and so forth. And each time I kind of, like I said, put the carrot out in front of the horse, and they started getting excited about it. What was major, I knew that I tested it for hours and hours and hours, lots and lots of hours, but it was fun. But I knew that I had been in it so much. When you're immersed in something, you tend to miss little things. And so I knew that it was going to be very important not to roll this out to the whole team and have 50 reps calling me all at once when they're out in the field if one little thing was wrong. So I did pick 3 of our very IT savvy reps. And when I felt like it was ready to go live in a home, I said, okay, you guys take it, run with it. And they did it for about 6 weeks, worked out any additional bugs out that were on our end that I had missed. And then I was able to roll it out to, everyone who might have been a little apprehensive about it. But I knew that if they were apprehensive and they go into a house and something doesn't work correctly, it's, throw your hands up in the air. And as everyone listening to this knows, sales reps, they don't like change. And when it doesn't work, they're going to take the path of least resistance. So that was very, very key for us to test, and then give it to a couple reps. And like I said, it was about a 6-week period. We worked out whatever needed to be worked out from that point, and then trained in phases with about 10 reps at a time. And then it kept rolling out at that point, and it was a very smooth transition.
When you rolled it out to certain teams, did the teams that didn't have it in their hands yet get pissed?
Yeah, they weren't happy. They weren't happy at all, because everyone was asked, well, wait, why did that team go first? And why didn't say, guys, you'll be fine. We're talking like literally a week and a half time period from, the first team to the last team that got it. Now, I will tell you, our New England office is not happy with me right now, because I wanted to, with them being remote from here and me not being there every day with them, I wanted to make sure that we worked out everything. And like I said, we rolled it out right after Christmas. So we're 6.5 months into it. And now I'm going up to New England next week to roll it out. So they're not too happy with me, but after next week, they'll be all good. I'll be back in their good graces.
And is it because they didn't get the neat, shiny tool that everybody else had?
Oh yeah. They think they're up there, using an atlas and not a GPS.
Nice. So again, you guys, that's something that we see commonly throughout organizations, is if they give it to one, that also starts inciting that excitement and that jealousy of like, oh my God, that tool made their life so much easier and they told me how amazing it was. I want it. So it becomes this really cool, shiny object that the kids fight over, so to speak. And again, that's just going to go back to this whole theme of what we talked about today, which is just owning your change management. So what we can do is, I think we'll call it at that. I know we're right about at time. So anyone who has any questions, feel free to reach out directly to us, info@leap2digital.com. You can also go to our website, leap2digital.com, and request a demo. We're happy to walk you through any of any of the different facets of your business and help you figure out what a good timeline looks like for your launch. If you want to learn a little bit more about what the product can do, we can also walk you through a very detailed demo prior to you figuring out whether or not this is going to be a good fit. So like I said, thank you so much again for joining us, Mike. We're incredibly grateful to have you as a partner. If there's anyone out there who needs help with this, we're really looking forward to working with you as well. We're always here to help. And again, very grateful for everybody that joins these. We'll have another couple coming up in the next couple weeks. Thank you so much again, as always. Mike, you have an awesome rest of your week. Everybody else on the call, you same as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, take care.